Hello everyone, good night. Welcome to episode 142 of Teh Tarik with Walid. And today we will be having the former Deputy Mufti of Singapore. So the Mufti is the highest religious authority in a country, and he was the number two essentially. His name is Dr. Mohammed Hannan Hassan, Dr. Hannan as we call him. So without further ado, let me send him an invite. I see he's already in. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam, Abdullah.
Okay, you can hear me well?
The afternoon, it was better than now, the
Oh, is
audio.
it? Oh, I think it's because I'm using my mic. Okay. You are in perfect frame already.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Ustaz Hannan, for doing this. It's a pleasure. So let's get to it. So what do you think, since you were a prominent religious elite in Singapore, what do you think is the ideal relationship between political elites and religious elites?
Well, it helped me to appreciate when you say religious elite, what do you have in mind? What do you mean?
So I mean the Islamic religious scholars.
Okay, so you're referring to the senior religious leaders, the
Yes.
senior
Yes.
asatizah, senior by virtue of their age, by their experience, as well as by their officers.
Yes, by their knowledge as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think we need to make that distinction because we have religious elite, to use that term, or what we mean, the senior religious leaders. They may not hold certain positions. They may not be a public officer, but they are equally, if not also more importantly, influential and have a great deal of influence. You also have the asatizah, religious leaders, who, by virtue of their career, their office, they work as a public officers like in MUIS, or they may also hold leadership roles in organizations. So because I think clarifying that is important because they would also probably function or have different perspectives depending on where they stand. Yeah. But I think the question here is really about trying to arrive at that common and shared interest between political elites and the religious elites. It's not just about the office and the influence, but really where do we meet? What is this common interest and the shared perspective? Right. So I think the challenge here is always in maneuvering and navigating this difficult space and arriving at that shared and common interest, and then secondly, how then do we apply this onto the community and the country? So here is I'm not questioning anyone's moral intentions because that is far beyond me. But really, okay, let's agree on these principles, let's agree on the objectives, and how do you arrive at these objectives, having considered the various aspects from the religious perspective, from the political perspective, from the community perspective. Right? Yeah. So if I may, Walid, pardon me kalau it's a bit draggy, but I think understanding this is very important. For example, MUIS. MUIS, by virtue of the constitution and the parliament, it is a statutory body. So it is a public agency. And that we need to recognize and acknowledge. Right? It is a public agency, just like any other public agencies and ministries. Being a public agency, it means that MUIS serves the government of the day. Right? The government of the day. I'm not saying the party of the day, it's the government of the day. Yeah. So if you so happen to be the minister in charge of Muslim affairs, then I will serve you.
Right.
It's about the government of the day, and the government is mandated by the people through democratic process, election, and so forth. Right. So any ministries, any public agencies, they serve the government of the day. And obviously, in serving this, there are a lot of negotiations, conversation within the system. As an executive body, how do we execute this well, and so on and so forth. Now, that is by constitution Moses' position. However, what is the perennial issues, problems, or challenge with MUIS is that is MUIS representing the government or representing the community?
Well, oh, you almost wanted. I had that written down already. So,
Oh, yeah.
what is the answer to that question?
Yeah, so what do you think? What do you think? How do you see MUIS? MUIS representing you, the community, the people, or it represents the government of the day? It is a perennial question. I mean, good to hear from the community.
Yeah, I think Muiz's role, the way I see, it's not too different from what I would say grassroots organizations' role. It's basically to relay the feedback from the community to the government. Right? But the worry is, instead of doing that, the communication is the other direction only, right? Where you are relaying something to the community. And as you know, I completely agree with you, by the way. I think there are, there's a page to remove MUIS to be independent, right? Then I think that one is, it doesn't understand the political system because MUIS is a statutory board. There are some things, it's in the constitution. There are some things that the statutory board cannot do. So I think sometimes there's a lack of appreciation for that, right? But at the same time, people are expecting MUIS maybe to champion things behind closed doors. And then people are not privy to those kinds of discussions. And maybe that's where the tensions come in. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like a family. The family, they can argue internally, gedebang-gedebung and everything, as members of the family. But when you're out there, then you cannot bring out whatever conversation within the family outside. I mean, ethically, it's not ethical, right? There ought to be certain trust when we discuss internally. There's certain trust, certain assumptions, certain probably data that we cannot reveal to the public, and so on and so forth. So that is natural, and that is a thing that the community, the people needs to understand. Yes, I understand that people expect MUIS to represent the people, which is, yes, the organization has to carry the voices of the people, right? And then you go into the room, you discuss, you bergaduh, you hit the table, whatsoever lah kan. People have not seen me hitting the table lah, but I can tell you. Right? But ethically, when a decision has been made, then it is only appropriate and ethical for us to abide to that lah.
Okay,
Right?
so I guess the issue for me and maybe some other people is that we've been in we haven't been in those rooms with MUIS and the government and so on, but we've been in some other rooms where there are government officials, there's administrators. Rarely ever administrators bang the table. Usually they have something to say, they will not say it afterwards. So I understand that MUIS cannot say things in public. I completely understand. Maybe some others don't, but I completely understand. And I don't think it's right also, because you are supposed to be advising behind closed doors. But what is the assurance on the part of the MUIS leaders, that the assurance to the community that our voices are indeed being represented behind closed doors? Because we are not privy to that.
Yeah, I think a great deal of mutual trust is involved here. One needs to have that mutual trust. And I mentioned that internally we need to discuss, we need to debate, we need to bang the table, whatsoever. All in the interest of the community or that shared interest. So I can testify in my close to 3 decades as a public servant, the conversation it's not like probably one imagine there's conspiracy and so on. For example, if I can recall, the issue of madrasah. You remember, was it it actually started 1998, and then the compulsory education law, 1999, then it was passed in 2003, thereabout. I was involved. I was the head of madrasah. So I was deep in this conversation, right? The conversation in there. Now, I can testify that the intention wasn't at all, to the best of my knowledge, and what I sense from the conversation, wasn't to close down the madrasah, as probably commonly, the talk of the coffee shop and so on and so forth, right? It wasn't the intention. Intention wasn't really the closing down of the madrasah, but there is this genuine concern about these 4,000 or so students, Singaporeans. How do we maximize the opportunity? And there were challenges, admittedly, of some of this, yeah. But obviously, some of these policies or plans unintended, may inevitably lead to this unintended outcome of closing of the madrasah. So that was the conversation between the different parties, the different sectors of the community, including MUIS. How do you ensure this? So trying to find the middle way, while we appreciate the concern, we appreciate the interest and the objective, but we do not want this to lead to this unintended outcome of closing of the madrasah. And therefore, the research study of what is sufficient, what is the number. So we did a manpower projection and so on and so forth. Right? Then eventually it arrived at compulsory education with some modification from the earlier conversation and so on and so forth. So a lot of conversation. And I remember the conversation in select committee in Parliament. I know these people do not want to mention names. How the conversation was so heated, in the parliament rooms at select committee, and these people, right? Kita gaduh pedang dulu dan sebagainya kan. We all still hold to certain position. By the end of the day, okay, decision is made, then move on. And it is only ethical that we don't go out and tell, aku dah cakap dah, no, I actually,
Yeah.
and then you need to you start to reveal, which is not proper lah. So
Right.
that's an example of negotiating and maneuvering. There is a common interest, there's a shared objective, but how do we go about doing this? And we, MUIS and the community, the NGOs, MMC, the Malay Muslim organizations, will need to bring and express these views. Yes, again, public may not see this lah. Some people who attended the select committees conversation, they may they have better position. Yeah. And I think Walid, I see after 3 decades, I see this evolution though.
What evolution?
This trust to share a bit more. That willingness on the part of, no, I'm not a public officer anymore, so I have no interest now. So don't say me that I ampu. But I see the evolution, the readiness to share some data. So often in some cases, the relevant leaders will have this closed door engagement with community leaders, and here some information, some data shared. The challenge is now to what extent we can share this data. And in order to, it's not just about data, it's also appreciating in the context of data in the background, right? So when you share information, it's not sufficient. You need to share the one information is 1.1, 1.1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and so forth, right? So that's always a judgment that leaders will have to make, right? You want to be transparent, you want to share some of this data, but to what extent? I can testify, I can see the evolution, the readiness to share some of this information.
Right. So you mentioned that there was coffee shop talk that the intention of the government was to close down the madrasas, but that's not what you gathered from your interactions. But why is there that common perception then? And why is there this disconnect between MUIS and maybe the average laity? Because that's just one example. We see so many examples where there's different talk on the ground, and does that signal a lack of trust between community and religious leadership, or what is it? Is it lack of communication, lack of trust? What is it?
I want to admit that it is all of this, and it depends on really the leadership of the day, right? Leadership meaning really the official leadership, down, and the common people's leadership and so on and so forth again. This trust building is always work in progress. we know where MUIS started, and in early 1968, then a lot of issues like the building of the mosque, the madrasas, for example. MUIS wasn't, madrasas existed way before MUIS, right? Way before MUIS. MUIS only in 68, but then in early years of MUIS, obviously we didn't have the resources to go into many of these parts, although it is stipulated in AMLA, the Administration of Muslim Law Act. But we could not. It was only later, I would suppose, in late 80s that MUIS started to commit and be involved in madrasah, the formation of committee. I was involved in many of these early committees, right? And so on. We developed, and through the interactions, you nurture and develop that trust. And I can say this also with the madrasas. During the initial period, it was really tough, but over time, that friendship, the relationship, that we talk over makan. It's not just a formal meeting, and I observed that trust has developed. But I also do not think that we want to take this for granted. It is really work in progress. We must continue to do that engagement, that transparency and timeliness. I always say this, I think in building trust, transparency is important, timeliness is important, right? But to what extent that transparency, it has to be mutual, meaning we the authority understands the people, trust the people, and people also need to trust the authority. I give you an example, Walid,
Yeah.
without mentioning the issue. I remember with since Ustaz Fatris also has left, and I remember with Ustaz Fatris and I know we engaged with a group of Asatiza that was on a certain issue, and we had to share this information. Yeah, we had to share this data because to this person, guys, we trust you, because without understanding this piece of information, we may not be able to acknowledge or appreciate the issue well. At the end of the day, you may still hold your position fine, but this is some of the information. So we shared, it's supposed to be confidential. But then the next day, it was out there. Right? People talking about that. People talking about that meeting and the information that we shared. Now, if you're in my position, alamak guys, how can I trust you more? Right? Now, I want to share.
Yeah.
It has to be mutual. Then there's mutual respect information, right? So yeah, so we cannot lah. But no. And but that said, we continue to engage in this conversation. We learn from each other. It's again like I mentioned, it's again the quality of leadership, the trust that people put in leadership.
If I may, if you mentioned transparency, but how can the laity, like normal people, not asatiza like myself, how can we develop that trust with our religious elites and institutions? We don't have access to those data, right? We don't have. And if you say that data is crucial to understanding certain policies, but we don't have, and we can only judge by what we see, right? We cannot judge by what we don't see.
Okay. Yeah, so that this is always work in progress, a judgment that we need to make. Leaders going down. So I think this. No, trust building involves probably three aspects. One is logic. Information. You try to explain it logically and sebagainya. Secondly, is the heart, the empathy. We appreciate each other's position. The authorities on the people and people on the authorities, right? And through this constant engagement between and often I see it's not logic. It's not logic. It's first and foremost a matter of the heart. Your empathy.
Agreed.
And then when there's this connection, then you develop that trust, and then you can engage in this mutual conversation, right? And I've mentioned earlier that is a constant. This is a really a work in a journey that we need to take. So therefore, leaders will need to continue to engage and be present, right? And they see you, and then they trust you.
What's the third? Is it first logic, second empathy?
Yeah, I've written all this now.
Okay,
It's
no
escaped
problem,
my
no
mind.
problem. Okay. So we can come back to it if you remember.
Yeah.
Okay. So I thank you for that. I think this is a difficult position for Muiz, and I think especially as I get older, I can appreciate a little bit more the difficulties that Muiz leaders have to
Mm,
navigate because it's not easy. But I guess the final element, right, between this is the community or some members. I cannot say the community because I think Muiz is highly trusted in some areas, like ridiculously high trust by the community, right? To the point that I think you even mentioned this in a different podcast, right? They don't want to eat anything if there's no halal cert, right? So that shows a high level of trust. For Hajj, they have a lot of trust in that, right? But maybe when it comes to more fatwas which have not of a political nature, but which inevitably has some connection with politics, right? Or deals with political realities. That's why maybe the trust. So we cannot say also the community doesn't trust Muiz or the community doesn't or trust Muiz, right? Because in different facets, some may trust Muiz more, in other
Agreed.
facets they may not.
Yes, indeed.
So I guess for some members of the community, and I would include myself as well, is the final one is how sure are we that our voices are really represented behind closed doors? Because if that is, for me, if that is assured, right, then no problem. I have no problem with whatever public statements that come out or do not come out, as long as I know that my interests are really
Mm.
championed behind closed doors.
How do you be? How are you assured? And how will you be assured that your voices are represented or are carried to the relevant table?
Yeah, so
What
that's the
can we
thing.
do? Yeah. So
That's the thing. There's
what
no
can we
there's no
do to?
mechanism, right? And
Yeah.
I haven't been to many, but I've been to some
Mm.
closed door dialogues. And I am, to be honest, I'm not assured that some of these voices, because what I hear from people when I speak, right, to people, and what I feel is very different from sometimes what is conveyed in those sessions. So
Mm.
I cannot answer you that I am fully assured. Neither am I
Yeah.
not fully assured. I think the only assurance I get is, I know you. No, we go back a long way. I know Ustaz Fatris. I know these
Mm.
people, and I have that trust that okay, they will champion. But not everybody is lucky to have a relationship
Sure.
with
Yeah.
with you or Ustaz Fatris, right? So how
Yeah.
could those people then be assured?
Yeah. So you mentioned the word that you trust. And you have developed this relationship with myself,
Yeah.
with Fatresh, and probably a few others.
Yep.
And this is through various communication we got for coffee or tea, right? I mean,
Right. Right.
we've done
Right.
this on
Right.
certain issues. Hey, let's
Right.
catch up, right?
Right.
And then when you have better appreciations and in your capacity, you can better inform the community, the people with whom you interact, right?
Right.
So I think it really boils down to the quality of the people. Yeah, the quality
Mm.
of people as in the leaders
Right.
as well as the followers. Now, I think when we talk about leadership, we cannot talk about leadership without talking about the followership
Agreed.
and vice versa.
Agreed. Agreed.
Right? I wrote this in an op-ed in Berita Harian last year. I think it was November, where I talked about followership, leadership, about the spectators and the commentators, and we all have this role. Right? So again, it boils down to the quality of the people. I can't speak of other people, but I can humbly talk about myself. I think the hours I spend with people, not in the hoo-ha, not in the social media or in media interview whatsoever, far greater than the official hours. Right? And today it is even more challenging because of the social media. Right? Example, yesterday and today, the conversation about the SCIS, so
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so coping with this is a challenge in this modern leadership.
Mm. But so let's say the example, right? The Singapore College of Islamic Studies, and of course, MUIS is the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore. Sorry,
Mm,
to our friends. Um, so the SCIS, like for me, right? When I read that, I personally don't really have an issue with the composition, because for me, maybe this is my academic bias as well, right? I come from university. You need people who knows how to run a university, which is a very difficult thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So you get knowledge from wherever it is, it doesn't matter to me. But when I saw it, so that's my personal bias. But I understand, because when I saw it, my immediate thought, even though don't have an issue with it, my immediate thought was, I know people are going to have an issue with it, right? So
Yeah.
it's quite foreseeable, right? These things.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how do you then overcome that when you see that, okay, this is going to happen, and people are going to be upset? Was there consultation, or was there explanation on the composition, or what is it? How do you deal with this is not a major crisis, but a mini PR crisis?
Yeah. So it's always that case. I can't speak of my colleagues, my former colleagues. Yes, I think it's foreseeable. One can anticipate, because this is not such first time, lah, right?
Right.
On such issues. I'm not involved. I'm not privy. I do not know. I want to believe. I want to think that this is anticipated. So therefore, probably there is a pre, during, and after. I understand that Minister Faisal Ibrahim has made an explanation this evening about that about the composition and so on lah, kan. So I would leave this to the colleagues over there. I like you. I'm also a member of the committee. I may not be privy to a number of this lah.
Yeah.
But it's a little learning process to and for everyone lah. But what is important here, Walid, is what I call this moral accountability, the issue of moral accountability on all parties. By moral accountability, I mean, when we talk about morality, there are two aspects for the moral accountability. One is knowledge, and second is intention. So you need that knowledge and this issue of intentionality. All right. You are not morally accountable if one of these is absent. If you do not know of the laws of certain things, I know in the law, ignorance is not an excuse, but in terms of moral accountability, if you do not know that that thing is haram, for example, you're not accountable, right? And when you know that thing is illegal or is haram, it's not correct, but you may not, you do not have that intention to violate and purposely, transgress that law, then you're not moral accountable, right? So the issue of knowledge, the issue of intentionality, these are essential in our moral accountability. So in issues, for example, SSS, or for that matter, Tudong, or the closure of madrasa, or whatsoever, the Gaza, and so on, right? One needs to understand the knowledge, need to have that knowledge. The data, the knowledge. So as simple as, when Muiz is a statutory board. But often people don't care. They don't understand how agencies work within the system, right?
Understand.
Yeah. So you don't have that knowledge, you don't have data. And often you're not involved, you do not have experience whatsoever in any of this public policy making and so on and so forth, right? Secondly, intention. Now, you do not know the intention of these people, right? Until and unless I proclaim, or these people proclaim. But we do not know the intention. So, and this is where we do not want to make a moral judgment on others. Oh, ni memang PAP, already SSS PAP government. So where's the knowledge, and how do you know the intention?
But we can never judge intention anyway, right? So we can only judge action, right?
Okay, so you don't judge intention.
Yeah.
You can judge based on the knowledge, data, and so forth. Right. So you can still, and I would welcome society, the civic society, to be critical and look into this data. But sometimes when data pun you do not know, you talk really, and you can see, like you can. I sometimes I said to some friends, and I DM to some of these people, don't talk about this. You're only revealing your ignorance and your stupidity. Right? Now, even now, if you have some data information, but you don't want to make that moral judgment on others because you do not know the intention. You can be critical, yeah, blah 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 blah, use data and so on and so forth, but you say these are the dog licking the boots of the people,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
they want to do this, they want to do that. Now,
Yeah.
how do you know?
Yeah.
So that responsibility, that amanah is equally on everyone, not just on
Agreed.
leaders, but also the followers. So you do not know the intention, so you hold on. You can have a view, but what really concerns me is when you see people making moral judgment. Right? Oh, hantam itu, hantam ini.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. I think judging intentions, I think maybe even I slip into that sometimes. Judging intentions is quite different from being critical of the actions, the policies, right? And I think you can say, oh, I know this person is a good man, but I disagree with this speech. You know, I know this person is a good woman, but I disagree with this policy. This is why this policy is wrong. But I'm not saying that this person is a sellout or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is quite common. Thank you. So you mentioned just now. Thank you. That was a very, I think, rich discussion, and I think it's a useful one. Hopefully, we heed your advice because as much as followers like myself want to be critical of leaders, I think leaders also have the right to be critical of followers, and followers also have to be self-critical, right, and look at where we get things wrong. So you mentioned 30 years, right, of more than 30 years of public service in Muiz. And as Deputy Mufti, how many years is that?
5 years, from March
5 years as Deputy
2020.
Mufti. So in this 30 plus years, right, you went through many life-changing events. Not even life-changing, world-changing events, right? You were in Muiz when 911 happened, right? And then, of course, so that's a world-changing event for change the world in many, many ways. But also 2 years after Jama'ah Islamiyah, so it came home, right? So
Yeah.
was discovered you were in Muiz as well. And then October 7 and the subsequent, which I think October 7 has changed the world in many ways as well. And
Yes.
it has affected how Muslims see their leaders as well. I think that's, I don't know whether reversibly, but it has affected. So which of these, and you know, madrasah, tuduk, so many, which is the most difficult experience?
um, I don't if I range or rate that based on difficulty, but I would want to categorize this based on opportunities. Meaning these are tough issues, and how did we turn this opportunity into our asset? For example, the 911. Now, when we talk about this mutual trust, it's not just trust with our community, but also trust with the other communities, and more importantly, also the trust with the other public agencies, right? Which is very important for Muiz to be able to work with a public agency. I can tell you, many years in Muiz, I've attended during the early years, especially before 911. When you attend a seminar, conference, or workshop, and where you from? I'm from Muiz. What is Muiz? What is Muiz? Honestly, other public officers probably hardly know about Muiz. That there is this agency called Muiz. So we also need to develop that trust presence within the family, within the public agencies. And Alhamdulillah, over time, I want to say that initially during my early years, I was very low. But I remember after 20 years or so, and especially after 911, Muiz is rated quite high in terms of public agencies now. People started to know Muiz. Muiz Academy, for example, when I was heading the Muiz Academy as a vice dean, we engaged with the different public agencies. People started to push it. And 911 to me was really a breakthrough. It was really a breakthrough. The context now, I remember this very clearly. Before that, the critique about Muiz, about our engagement with the community, and I remember that particular evening, we had a a meeting with a couple of people who are very critical out there about the agencies and MUIS and so forth. So we wanted to work together. Okay, so we were sharing information and so on, so that these individuals could appreciate. And just after the meeting, I remember this very vividly. Just after the meeting, I came back home, turned on the news, and then there's the 911 news. And I called my colleagues. That's it. Our conversation this evening will go to the drain. Gone, habis about trust and so on. But Alhamdulillah, I think I wrote this in one of the chapters of the book. I can't remember which book. How 911 was turned to the advantage, and now some agencies cannot but work with MUIS and work with MMOs, Pergas, for example, and RRG. For example, the formation of RRG. I was also the founding member of RRG. So, and over time, the relevant agencies, the other communities, and then we have Harmony Center. Also, a few years after that, these were opportunities for us to build that trust with other people. And that we, our Malay Muslim community, need to appreciate or need to understand. It's not just about logic and this is the law, this is what my region tells me, this is a policy, this is our constitutional right, and so forth. It's about trust, it's about the heart. So, Alhamdulillah, I think we have been able to turn that to for betterment. And then that's what we see today. The 7th October was another event. Something similar, but the context is different, the conditions vary. Now it is even challenging with social media and so forth, right? Again, although I think I still need to respect some of the confidentiality, but let the people inside know that I've played my part. So like I mentioned, internally, we need to really engage. We tak boleh, you don't want to self-censor early. There need to be really rigorous conversation within. When it is still within the family, we need to discuss this rigorously. We can disagree, we ought to disagree, blah, 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 blah. But then when the position is made, then we respect that position. I want to think as a practicing Muslim, and I know probably we do not want to use religious texts too often, but that's what my religion teaches me. You asked to consult, kan? But what is very interesting on that verse about consult them, and then when having made the decision, you tawakkal ala Allah, you leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One needs to read the verses before that. The prelude or the introduction to that, being lin talawm, you have a soft heart towards others. Because walau kunta fazzan ghalidhal qalb, if you have a really hard and you use harsh word, people will run away from you. And then the Quran says, forgive them, fa'fu anhum, wastaghfir lahum, forgive them and seek prayer for them. Then you go washawirhum fil amr, then you consult. So it's that. But so my point is again is the quality of the leadership, the trust among the people and the leaders, and when the time to discuss, we need to discuss honestly, openly. But when the decision is made, we respect the decision and we move on.
So I mean, I understand that, and there's a context of that verse as well, right? Even though this is a secular show, we don't have to be secular individuals, right? So we can use religious justifications. But do you appreciate how many people are feeling? People are feeling despair. This is the depth of despair. It's not just this. So when they see that sometimes religious leaders seem to not be doing even some simple things. I remember some organization early on, some Muslim organization, coming out with a statement, not MUIS, by the way, coming up with a statement which was neither here nor there, come down. I said, there's no way for me to come down. And that statement made me angry because you are trying to say something without saying anything, because I don't know what you're trying to do also. And for me, it's very difficult for me to, in the moment where I require moral clarity the most, if I don't see it from someone, then it's very difficult for me to ever take that organization seriously again. I have to say that Muiz, for me, given the restrictions, given the political realities, Muiz has done quite okay on Gaza and Palestine. From the prayers in the mosque to the Friday sermons, I think it has been quite reasonable. But there is a sense of expectation on the part of Muslim, I think ordinary Muslims, that our leaders need to be doing more. Right? What do you think? Do you think that's your assessment as well? Has it changed since 7 October, this community relationship with the religious elites?
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And this is really, like I mentioned, it's a work in progress, and it's a constant effort to develop that trust, engagement, and so on and so forth. And I mentioned earlier, this has to be mutual. I've said this earlier, even during the early days of these issues. It has to be mutual. In as much as you want leaders to be transparent and open, the others also must have that mutual respect and trust, right? But when it's human psyche lah. You criticize openly, especially when these are not informed criticism kan. I mean, like anybody kan, it's anybody. Now let me be clear. Our podcast, our conversation here, Walid, is not about Muiz, eh?
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I already said. I think on Gaza, I think Muiz. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah, yeah.
impressed by what they are doing.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to say yes, I'm a former Muizens, but
Yeah, yeah,
this is not about Muiz. We're talking
Yep,
about
yep, yep.
religious
Indeed,
elites, religious authority,
Right,
and
right,
Muiz
right.
be the one and only. But we
Right.
also have other civic society, which I think
Of course.
is equally important. In fact,
Right.
more important. I always argue this way. Muiz can only be successful when our civic society is equally successful. Right? The maturity to provide, to offer criticism, advisors, that empathy, that compassion, that mutual respect, that mutual trust. You need to understand, right? It has to be mutual.
So by civic
Therefore,
society, you mean the other Muslim organizations, basically, right?
the other Muslim organizations, the community, as well as the whole communities, like the whole society, like the non-Muslims and so on. And this has to be mutual. It saddens me, but I always remind myself and friends, don't take to heart, don't take seriously sometimes comment in the social media,
Yeah, yeah,
the trolls, right?
yeah,
People just enjoy doing that.
yeah.
I think empathy is important though. In as much as the leaders, the religious elites need to empathize the people also need to empathize these leaders, the context where they are. And it is not just Muiz, but other MMOs, other Malay Muslim organizations, Pergas, AMP, and so on and so forth, right? It's not corruption lah. Okay, so that's we mentioned before, right? It's not competition, but we need to empathize. Huh? I wrote this in the piece I mentioned earlier about followership and leadership, right? And let me give an example. And I wrote this, I remember writing this in the piece. When we watch, you're a football fan, kan? You mana? You
Newcastle.
Newcastle. Saya baik, bukan setan ah.
Harap.
Okay, no, and I'm sure if you play football, you can appreciate this. It is easy for grandstand spectators to maki. Ini apa dah depan goal? You are just
Yep.
inside the goal. You cannot score dan sebagainya. Penalties, for example, you cannot score. Apa
Yep.
you have trained. Now Ronaldo has played and practiced for thousands of times kicking, but still failed.
Yeah.
Right on some occasions.
Yeah.
Right? It's not technical. No, it's really being there, being watched by millions of people, the expectations and the pressure, the psyche. Until and unless you are there,
Yeah.
you're not able to empathize.
Agreed.
Right? So recently, I'm not sure whether you watched the AFCON, the final, the
Indeed.
African
Yeah.
Cup, right, between Morocco and
Senegal
Senegal,
and
right?
Morocco, yeah.
And that penalty didn't work. It
Yep.
worked for Zinedine Zidane World Cup before this.
Yep.
It didn't work. Oh, I can understand the pressure on. So often on these policies, with all due respect, I see people, okay lah, you want to comment, but you have not been there to appreciate this. But minimally, other than humility and respect lah. So that's what I mean. Civic society, we need to be critical. We ought to be critical. We need to express our views, articulate our views in ways that put yourself in that position lah.
Yeah. But Ustaz, don't you think that's the problem, a problem we have in civic society? I see that every time, I mean, I don't know, I feel very uncomfortable with this when I see at these Malay events, Muslim events, and the leaders of the organizations are always taking selfie with this politician here, that politician there. Isn't it good to have some distance? And then when people like me say, oh, they are co-opted or they look co-opted, then there is a denial. But then you give the impression that there is like, isn't
Yeah.
that good? Like, if civic organizations, you say, ought to be critical, but we don't see that criticality, right? So how can we say then that, oh, okay, how can we be confident that these civic organizations are doing their job? Don't you think at least the perception of distance between state and actually it helps the state also if there's fewer selfies between leaders and then of course you have our friends, civic society leaders then entering politics also. It doesn't help. It doesn't help that impression, right? So don't you think that is an inherent problem in us? It's difficult to have civic society I see in the Muslim space, especially outside of the state ambit.
Do you see me also doing that? I mean,
I have to
honestly,
check your Instagram.
okay, the fact that
Correct.
Alhamdulillah.
Don't say, yeah, correct. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Walid, you may be right, lah. You may be right. There's certain expectations on the part of community. Yeah, you may be right. So we need to be a bit more sensitive, a bit more savvy about some of this, lah. No, yeah, I don't deny it. But often also, and I can't talk about apa ni, can't talk of all. But yeah, I do not think with some it was intended to or no you fan these people dan sebagainya. Just natural lah, our people, eh. But again, yes, leaders are not like the followers. What you eat, what you dress,
Exactly.
what
Right.
you
So,
say
so if it's
becomes
a Muslim person living in Tampines, sees a Muslim MP, yes, I understand they go and but I see Muslim community leaders and Muslim politicians at the same level. There's no need to fanboy, fangirl, right? I mean that's the way I see it. So I don't know. I just feel like this okay after the first selfie, but the fifth selfie, I mean it just creates the impression that will my organization, my civic society leader, speak up for me when the time calls for it? If there is
yeah.
no distance between it just creates that impression. And I may be wrong, of course, I may be wrong. The picture may not mean anything, right? But it's just an impression. Yeah.
But Walid, I can testify for some of the leaders who really speak up lah, where it matters. Yeah, I have my criticism on some, but again, I say it's the quality of the people, the
Right.
quality of the leadership,
Right.
and I do know that some people really carry and engage in conversation. They may not be the favorite lah. I think it's important for these leaders, whether the national, the community, or so forth, to be authentic. It means that don't self-censor, don't second guess of what is expected of of me and in that particular
Exactly.
meeting and so forth.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
We must be authentic in expressing whatever views, and even if we carry these views, when we express the views. So we can, like I said, you can ding dong, debate and so forth, man. I think that reflects maturity. But once a decision has been made, or a certain however relative, then we respect. We don't go out and tell aku dah cakap ke dan sebagainya. I cannot tell people aku dah cakap dah. Say this kan, and that is the amanah, and that is also between us and God lah. And that's a value of no. I want to think the reward of such leadership. That's between us and God.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you. So there's a comment by Win as well, right? So it seems like there is when you said that fans, sorry, the football analogy, like if you haven't been there, you cannot. Do you think that's an elitist critique of followership? Because ultimately, followers, I guess it's also good for followers to have expectations. Right? I always say to my Muiz friends, right, the day that the community doesn't have expectations of you, that's the day that Muiz is gone already, you know. So, but not all criticisms is based on expectation. Some of it is based on malice. But I would like to think that the majority is not. Majority comes from a position where maybe it's a misunderstanding or maybe lack of appreciation, but some of it is justified. So, do you think there is some when we tell people, oh, you don't know what we go through, so you cannot criticize. But you also don't know what we go through, right? As a follower, having to see this, so do you think there's some? I'm paraphrasing Wayne's question.
Yeah, I think we cannot use that as a main argument. I don't basically justify. I don't want to justify myself, or we do not want to justify ourselves just simply seeking empathy and sympathy, right? It is expected. No, it's like no, it's like how do I do it? The ikhlas part, ikhlas and A class. Ikhlas, the honors on the doer is ikhlas, to do with sincerity, and you also do with A class quality. No, you want to deliver A class service. That is the onus of the deliverer. The onus of the recipient is to be grateful. Gratitude, right? Whoever who receives must also learn to be grateful. And I think these are the two sides of the same coin. You cannot expect one to do ikhlas and then the others do not be grateful. And recognizing and acknowledging the good things and so forth. So I mentioned
sorry, Ustaz. Shouldn't leaders also be grateful that they are in positions of leadership, that they are able to lead the community?
So that's the thing I said. It has to be mutual. It has to be mutual, and it's not perfect. It is continuous. I would argue that no, we cannot just simply argue based on you're not here so you don't understand, or you do not know, all right? You do not know, so you don't understand. I want to empathize. The issue of Gaza, I think, is a lot more of empathy first, not the logic, policy issues and stuff. Now, I want to believe, and I think that the state has political considerations and so forth. But the matter here is primarily matter of heart. It's empathy. So we ought to show the empathy. Sometimes we do not have solutions, but okay, I hear you. Okay, let's read dua. Okay, you want to express, articulate, give space for this. I've given my views to the relevant authorities. Give space. Because if you don't give space, then it will burst elsewhere. Right. All right? And because this is mainly 100%. At that level is the feeling. The politics, the geopolitics, and you're a political scientist, you understand this. It's very complex, right? Economy and various other things, and it's very difficult for common people to understand. But my empathy of the people is okay. I hear your feeling, and then the people's empathy and trust also. Okay, thank you for listening to us, and so forth. But what else can we do, right? I trust, okay, there's the geopolitical considerations are really complex and so forth. So it has to be mutual, and it is work in progress. It's really, and this shifting and this, what I call this is the dialectical process. You got the thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. So that always interaction between thesis and antithesis will produce synthesis. But I also want to remind myself to be mindful and careful of while we do all this, the other elements yang may spoil and disrupt this process lah. The allegations. Sometimes I see the allegations on fatwa and so on and so forth. It really pains me lah. I give example being fatwa for decades. When people say the fatwa committee is subjected to the government instructions, it pains me, no. I will testify before God lah, bahwa these members are how sincere. These are people and members of fatwa. They are not public officers. Okay? The only public officer in the fatwa committee is Mufti, the chairman. The rest they are not. If you remember people like Ustaz Ahmad San Haji, Ustaz Dan, Ustaz Abdullah, and many others, Ustaz Mak Saleh, people even they are frail, weak, but they want to contribute. And I can stand before God that I do not think that these people are basically towing the line of the power, authority, and sebagainya.
Okay.
So be careful, be mindful of making such statements. Right, and while we say that, okay, guys, all the fatwa, the asatizah elite, you will stand accountable before Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So let it be. I said when I get that statement, Ustaz, you'll be stand before Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, be accountable. So yes, fine. Alhamdulillah, I want that. I want that because He knows. He's the most just. But the fear is those who make allegations and so forth. You are equally responsible before God. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I mean, there's a lot, but if I could extend by 5 minutes, so maybe is that okay with you, or do you need? Okay. So we have until 10:05. Okay. So just one issue. There are other things I wanted to get to, but I don't think we have time. One of the things that happened during the elections, I think I saw that there was the first time I saw there was such open. Not that there hasn't been before, but I think the level of criticisms towards our religious leadership, and I think it's precipitated by the events, not necessarily what Israel has done, but also the events leading up to the elections pertaining to it, the Calvin Cheng incident, and so on. So I remember during that time you wrote about adab and how we should be mindful when we criticize politicians, right? Muslim leaders, Muslim political leaders. So is there, in your conception of what is ideal, is there any space for the Muslim laity, people who may not have all the facts and data and stats, for them to criticize our Muslim politicians publicly?
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, I think this is very important. I mentioned earlier that the quality of our leadership will also depend on the quality of our people, the civic society. And I think we need to nurture and develop a critical society. Because
What society? Sorry.
A critical society, right? Because if we do not do that, then I think I'm very concerned. To use our history in Islam, Umar bin Khattab said that you see anything, please tell me, right? Even from an old lady and so on. I think it's very important to be critical. I think it's very important to give feedback. But equally, if not also more importantly, is the manner we give that criticism. And this is where the moral authority I mentioned, moral accountability I mentioned earlier, right? The two aspects. The intention, we do not know people's intention. And I think we need to provide criticism, and we need to do this with decorum. We need to be able to offer data, whatever data that we may have, right? For example, even before this SCISS, the composition of leaders and so forth, members of the committee, this is not the first time. I mean, if you remember, just before COVID, we had the COFA committee on future asatizah, which I was also a member. Mr. Maliki was the chair, and we also had non-Muslim representatives. And this conversation, was also thrown to us. And then instead of, do you not know that this is Islamic civilization, this is Islamic college, and how could you refer to a kafir, telling us what's good in this and so forth? No, instead of putting it that way, it could be And this is also the adab taught in our holy book Quran. It could be seeking clarification, for example. Could we better understand why the need of
Yeah.
non-Muslims here?
Uh,
What could possibly be their role?
yeah.
So express, I'm concerned that this will affect probably the curriculum, which I do not think so. I've been you know that I was the head program head of the postgraduate program Islamic Contemporary Societies, and we have we have a joint committee which consists of even non-Muslims, and I want to think that that was a good learning experience for them to better appreciate our scholarly thinking and process, right? So the manners, uh, but sometimes you see some of this conversations, some of this writings, and immediately pam pam pam.
Yeah. Well,
So
why is the average Muslim subjected to a higher standard than a Muslim leader, right? So I mean, this I think we have had conversations with this before. For instance, if I see one of the things I see, right, when we talk about adab, or when religious scholars talk about adab, in the context of criticism of leaders, right? Why is it that the adab only goes one way? Because I've never heard, I've never seen a religious elite say when the politician is criticizing people, oh, then immediately the religious scholar talks about adab. I've never seen, and maybe there is, I just haven't seen before. So why is the Muslim laity subjected to a higher standard than a person who's more knowledgeable, who has more power, who is in a position to affect our lives far more than an average criticism on Facebook?
now I think the onus is on both. Okay, I don't deny it. And obviously the standard and the expectations vary from one, and this is what we say. In Arabic term, we say Hassan al-Abrar Sayyatum Qarabin. What is good for common people is bad for people of certain hierarchy, right?
Right. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So there's this expectation, but so I think that this is equally important for both. And
But that's not the point. I know you think that, but my point is there is no talk about adab when, for instance, then Minister Masagos criticized Faisal Manap so harshly for representing what a lot of people were saying. I didn't hear talk about adab then. Why is the adab only reserved for criticisms towards Masagos instead of when Masagos was displaying for me a lack of adab or by those standards, right? Why
okay,
is it only for why is it a punching down instead of a punching up?
you got a point. Yes, we can express this. I don't remember. I can't recall now some of these occasions. Yeah, but we want to subject everyone to a certain degree of adab. But because also my position as or used to be that leadership, and then people basically criticizing leaders probably is more common than and then vice versa. So I received such a thingy like that. Sometimes words unbecoming lah. So itu that's why sometimes I raise about this issue of adab, the manner, and more important, like I mentioned, the intention. We don't question intention. I read somewhere, I think it was Hannan, my former colleague, about intention. Yes, we cannot judge one's intention until and unless publicly said, which I said that earlier. But it's really on the behavior. I'm concerned lah when we make that moral judgment. I have this conversation even with my family members, because my family members also, they're not privy to some of this. And it's even difficult now, Walid, when your loved ones, and you cannot explain to them. I can tell you stories. Right? And then, my family, my brothers, Hanif, Hasbi. My God. Sometimes Hari Raya, alamak, become a...
Sounds like every week in my family.
But there are things that we cannot divulge, right? By virtue of OSA or the Official Secret Act and so forth, right? But I must admit, there has been occasion where I got to pull my father to a room, and then explain to him, and why things are. So I mean, it is a constant, it's a process. I call upon leaders to appreciate and understand this the people's expectations, and being present and engage and listen to them is very, very important in trust building. In trust building, empathy is really key. It's not just a logic. It's really so we need to continue to do that. Okay, leaders, whether the national leaders, community leaders, or even the informal leaders, lah. Right? I
Informal
call upon
leaders.
them. They are the informal leaders, lah. Sometimes some people, they are a bit more expressive and noisy in the social media.
No, don't have to talk about me like that.
And I wasn't thinking of you. Well, honestly, Walid, like, I mean, I see that there's greater appreciation on your part. I know you even during the early days, kan. I remember,
Indeed.
yeah, and then you share about your thesis about co-optation, and then I said to you, Walid, you didn't ask me. I was involved in that particular meeting that you mentioned in the thesis, and it wasn't that
You
way,
remember,
right?
Ustaz, you remember what my response to you was? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Oh, I asked you what's your email. That was my.
Well, it was published already.
But you're right, Ustaz. I have gotten a better sense of appreciation for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
But because I was also that comes with being exposed to, as in having these personal relationships and having that trust, which I said. But I understand when people can only judge by what they see in public, right? Because that's all the access they have. They cannot like not say anything because their lives are affected by these things, and that's the only things that they see, right? So I guess my point about the adab is, for me, it may ring a bit hollow, right? If the adab is only taught to people with less power than people with more power, right? And I say this, my very good friend is in politics now, right? Dr. Harun. And I will say things that I will never criticize him in public, but there are things that behind closed doors, I will say to him. It's out of my friendship. But that's why I have gotten a better sense of appreciation. At the same time, I don't really judge people who do not have this access, and they are more critical also.
Yeah, good. I'm glad and happy, and this is part of the journey. We move on the journey, and we discover things. And I think that's the maturity and wisdom that we develop and nurture. Often these wisdoms, it's like you can't force a tree or durian to come to fruition against the nature, right? I used to unable to appreciate my parents. My argument would be they are not well educated like me, like the children, right? They are just secondary school, primary school. We are the university, the PhD, and so forth. So when young, I tend to see them as that they do not know. But as I grow older and now a grandfather, I see wisdom. I see wisdom. It's not about logic. It's something I've said this many times. We need to develop this attitude of think with your heart, feel with your head. It's not think with the head. It's how can you think with the heart and feel with the head. And it's maturity. I do not have a formula to that. I truly believe if we walk on the path with faith, inshallah later we understand. I mean, parents children, they're always about the parents, and when they themselves become parents, they appreciate this. So what I'm asking, my call is, I call the community, the people, to be critical, to express views, to advise our leaders. Right? Because if we lose that, I think we will not develop good leaders. Right? But equally important is the manner we express our views. You call it adab. Or even you talk about adab, there's certain decorum, there's certain respect, there's certain ways to express our views. Even ChatGPT knows how to to express views. Right? You say ChatGPT, okay, use F word, and the ChatGPT will do. But you tell, okay, do it with the decorum, with respect. ChatGPT will be able to offer you that, right? So I think it's important to maintain that. It's important to maintain that. I agree with you. The same expectations is on the leadership. They too must observe that. But we are all human beings. We are all on this journey together, lah. So my call is, please be critical, please provide views when you are invited in certain asatiza. Our fatwas, it's not, we get plenty of engagement with asatiza actually. But I also often see some of the previous fatwas or ishads. Some of the asatiza were a bit more critical and very loud in the social media. I also learned that they didn't attend this engagement for whatever
That
reason.
is a problem. For me, that's a huge problem. If you criticize, then you are invited. Turn up, right? You have to turn up and then criticize as well.
Yeah, so this people didn't turn up for whatever reason, then we need to have special edition for them, right? So it has to be mutual, but
Yep.
all said, I'm optimistic, inshallah. I keep reminding myself and my colleagues, don't take to heart, don't be too overly bothered and worried. We want to see a better community, yes, but no. Don't take to heart lah. Ustaz Fatris, if you talk Ustaz Fatris when he was a Mufti pun, he kena macam-macam. People like him, personality of Fatris, and people who know very lembut.
Yeah, somebody who knows, he's the Malay saying, if you step on an ant, it doesn't die, right? That's him, right? Yeah, that's him. No, on that beautiful note, I think we should end this. Thank you, Ustaz. I think it's Muissa's loss, but it's my gain that you are no longer DM. That now you can do podcasts and you have your own podcast as well with your children, and that's more a family-oriented podcast, right?
Ya Bunaya. Ini jual koyok sikit. Please
go ahead.
Please like and
listen
subscribe.
to it. It's on Spotify, right? Spotify.
Yeah, it's Spotify and on YouTube. So you go to my IG, because what to me it's not about Hannan and the children. It's only about the hard conversation. All this podcast, my children and I, especially my daughter Shifa, the producer of this podcast, it's all unscripted. Often just an hour before Baba kita do the recording, okay, fine. It's really an honest conversation between my children and I. My wife, that's also episode my wife, and we'll just open up. And the idea is basically to, I have many of such conversations before this with the family. So then we ask, how can we also share some of this conversation with others? It's not necessarily the content, but also the process. And this is a follow-up to a book juga. This also a follow-up to a book. I have the book, Ya Bunaya.
Yep.
So from that book, then my daughter, who is also the producer of the book, wanted to have this a podcast. So Alhamdulillah, I thought I learned a lot in the process. I didn't think about it. Then I learned a lot.
That relationship between you and your children is something I'm jealous of. I hope to have as well. Honestly, thank you so much, Ustaz. It was
My
such
pleasure.
a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very
Assalamualaikum.
much. Assalamualaikum. Bye.